signifying his birth after his father's death. However, the timological humus quietly reorganizes the entire paradigm of the play. In biological terms, humus is the organ substrate that forms through the decomposition of dead organisms, which in turn sustains new life in the soil. By marrying posthumous, Imogen chooses to plant herself rooting into the ontological depth of the humus, privileging the subterranean over the coherent logical surface. This gradually weakens the rigid hierarchy, seemingly perfect from outside, a literal application of weak thought. In the language of plant geometry, this wound becomes a site of opening, a point of destruction that transforms everything. As suggested by Michael Murdo, this weakness of being helps to define ontophytology. As a necessity for a new category emerges. Just like a fungus requires a fissure to penetrate through the wood, Imogen enables the conditions necessary for the growth of fungi by stepping into the organic substrate, uprooting the greed. While Deleuze and Guattari's rhizome indeed connects the incidents, the weakness that results in the eruptive biological resolution in the final act with its 24 revelations is invisible. On the contrary, a mycelial framework provides the space for a non-linear sporulation after its refusal to submit to its systemic violence. When the first gentleman introduces posthumous, his visible poverty gets overshadowed by the richness of his character, equating him with the vegetal soul that ranks the lowest when positioned within the Aristotelian hierarchy. Posthumous begin at the end of the rigid constitutes the foundational ground for Imogen's development. We move away from the bias to the vegetal antiphysics elucidated by Michael Murdo. He states plants avoid explicit visibility by not giving into power and withdrawing from its visible economy. This mycelial resistance demonstrates that often power does not operate up and down. It can also emerge from the ground. Slide number 3, please. Pisanio as a hypha and Imogen in her vegetal dormant state. Hypha are thread-like structures that sprays through a substrate following mycelium. In Cymbeline, Pisanio breaks the greed of the coat as a filament, the narrative's primary hypha. In Michael Murdo's plant thinking, he defines a political space for the plants as vegetal democracy, where there is no central command, only relationality between plants that is facilitated through the role of Pisanio. This makes the Wells Forest a place of decentralized governance resisting the capitalist court framework. Pisanio's horizontal mobility reallocates the truth between Britain, Rome, and Wells Forest. His lies are a requirement so that the characters thrive in the toxic impositions of the environment and moves Imogen to a fertile soil. Therefore, he is responsible for carrying the nutrients, the Queen's box, and the warnings of the betrayal as well. This subterranean world of the Wells Forest is where the identity dissolves itself as the princes have lost their selfhood, becoming its part. Murdo mentions that the vegetal life is lived in common that compels the characters to lose their sovereignty. However, it is not a deficit but an addition to the singular plurality of the forest. Slide number 4, please. This foregrounds Imogen's transition into the forest. Traditional critics like Shaw have strongly rebuked Imogen's affectionate docility, identifying her as a puppet as she follows Pisanio's lead. However, through Murdo's lens, this results into vegetal patience and not passivity. The vegetal democracy manifests itself in the cave of Belarius, where Imogen, disguised as Fiddle, enters a state of vegetal dormancy. The rhythm loses its pace due to the temporality of plants that runs as a secondary blind process, unlike the temporal scale of humans and animals. Murdo argues that even the seed is also a potential tree, folded in time, but those seminal potentialities come to light later. Imogen's time in the cave is a process that initially begins as she intends to survive from the courtly axioms. Therefore, her death by potion and the awakening that follows is a self-interruption, after which she will finally shed her courtly identity and germinate in the forest under suitable conditions. Slide number 5, please. Finally, the stage of sporulation, which is act number 5. This ushers us to the most critically disputed segment of the play, that is the final act. From an Aristotelian perspective, the 24 distinct revelations in Act 5 are a structural collapse. Yet in a mycelial framework, the play, instead of disintegration, leads to sporulation. In mycology, a mushroom does not erupt overnight. It takes months of processing in the subterranean web once again, making the prolonged labor invisible. Finally, on reaching its biological limit, the explosion takes place as the logical greed fails to support the system and its characters. These fruiting bodies in the wood-wide web can be neatly reorganized according to their biological functions. Firstly, the decomposition of the toxic elements through Queen's deathbed confession. The revelation of the poisoning plan and the fete of Clotaine. Secondly, the network lost in the Wells Forest joins the royal line when the princes, Gytarius and Arviragus, are found and Belarius reveals his identity. This is followed by the recognition of Fiddle by Lucius and later by the king. Finally, the redistribution of truth through the confession of Iachimo and and the identity disclosure of Posthumous. These are not poorly integrated plot points. These revelations embody the vegetal multiplicity. The sheer density of information in the last act ensures that the truth can no more be suppressed. They release themselves into the world through the spores, ultimately establishing the wood wide web visible to the audience. The last slide, please. To draw this argument, it can be said that Cymbeline has long been miscategorized because we have endeavored to measure its Welt Eden with the wrong tools. Now we are moving beyond the Procrustean bed of Euclidean logic and embracing Murdel's planned philosophy. We are uncovering a play that is not fractured but instead thriving. We see that the disarray in its actuality is a sophisticated mycorrhizal framework. We recognize that Imogen's dormancy and Pisanio's horizontal agency are the most vital signs of a healthy ecosystem. Shakespearean romance in its final form, therefore, is not a mechanical game. It's not a game of dolls, but an ecological system, proving that even when the surface grid, the logical grid of the world, it is wounded, it is fractured, but the subterranean web, which is the wood wide web of the human emotions, it is continuing to process and connect and ultimately leading to the fruition. Cymbeline, therefore, does not offer us a logical resolution, but a biological restoration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was definitely a very, very interesting take on Shakespeare. So we move on to the next paper, which I believe is a joint paper presented by our very own PG students, Bipasha Mondol and Shoumosri Dotto. The title of their paper is The Politics of the Stranger, Aegeon and Border Control.
Good afternoon, everyone. The title of our paper is The Politics of Stranger, Aegeon and Border Control. I am Bipasha Mondol and my co-presenter is Shoumosri Dotto. William Shakespeare's play, The Comedy of Errors, has been traditionally treated as a high fuss about mistaken identity and slapstick. Still, it is actually based on a morbidly grim politics of freedom, the migrant body in both its structure and content. The current modern academic theories encourage us to view Shakespeare as not being static object, but instead a living cultural text reframed around pressure of global modernity. By focusing on the tragic figure of Aegeon, rather than merely the comical twins, we can set about to study the play as an area for exploring institutional power and the making of public meaning regarding the status of stranger, both socially and legally. The play's conflict can be traced back to the first scene, which creates an atmosphere of institutional authority and an exclusionary cultural policy. Aegeon, a merchant from Syracuse, is arrested in Ephesus, not for anything he has done personally, but for where he came from. There is a trade war between the cities of Syracuse and Ephesus, resulting in a governmental narrative that has criminalized the perceived other. In this scenario, the concept of nationalism, empire, and governmental narratives become highly relevant. Aegeon has been defined as a stranger and classified accordingly. And this definition is determined by the existing dominant ideologies regarding how his presence should be perceived. As a result, Aegeon is represented as a migrant caught in a legal crossfire. The traditional labels associated with the play can in fact obfuscate the underlying ideologies conditions surrounding the state-sponsored executions. The use of post-colonial and world literature studies framework creates a critical link between Elizabethan laws governing maritime activities and how we perceive these via global modernity. Today, namely regarding the increasing complexity of our border control and citizenship. The theory behind this connection can clearly be seen through a character named Duke Solinus. When he discussed the law and its implication for individuals living in an ever-changing world, he stresses that no matter how one feels on a personal level towards an individual, in this case a warm-hearted individual, he can provide absolution from punishment. His position indicates there are no exceptions for individuals who are subject to that what is institutional gatekeeping of legal system, a concept that can also be viewed in present day as analogs to the inflexible responses of bureaucracies to issue of global immigration and migration. Aegeon exemplifies this phenomenon when he demonstrates how interpretive communities like the legal communities of Ephesus create context in which individuals outside of those communities become systematically marginalized or excluded from those contexts. In this way, Ephesus border operates as a modern-day geopolitical border, acting as a physical location and site of negotiated power. One that nation policies intentionally deploy when determining whether or not to make the traveler legally invisible or criminal simply by virtue of their ability to travel through or occupy functional spaces.
The exclusion of migrants from their own histories and labeling them as either legal categories of threats to national security perpetuates a brutal politics of reading that fits into how we understand the identity of migrants. This dehumanizing experiences enables state narratives like those found in Ephesus to justify a stranger's murder, such as Aegean. This demonstrates how the use of nationalism can validate acts of violence perpetrated by governments while simultaneously portraying those migrants without access to legal recognition and therefore culturally invisible. The legal invisibility of these migrants is also an example of cultural labor performed on behalf of the state in order to protect the state's ability to feign sovereignty for purposes of trade war and international conflict. The recognition of these patterns produces a counter-reading. Next slide. Counter-reading of the text, challenging the canonical authority of the border and reframing the play as an investigation into access and equality as they exist in both historical and contemporary media ecologies. When examining themes of the Comedy of Errors, teaching is often described as terms of its politics and implications for ethical pedagogy. Traditionally, the Comedy of Errors has been taught as parody, as tragedy or comedy, or in other words, by looking at how it has been combined with other texts to create new meanings through different plots. A framework for ethically teaching the play's diverse classroom communities requires counter-reading that one destabilizes the Comedy of Errors from a purely comedic reading to include the subaltern. Aegean's experiences challenges both canonical or purely canonical text as well as the canonical border as defined by canonical authority. Therefore, by emphasizing Aegean's subaltern experiences, researchers open a space for public meaning relative to contemporary media ecologies and lived experiences, realities relating to access and equity. The Comedy of Errors serves as a substantial site of cultural labor through its exploration into the foundations of how a state perceives a stranger. Aegean's exploration yields the framework for an understanding of the ways in which nationalism and institutional authority creates the basis for human interpretations. Moving past this singular universal Shakespeare, we see an Aegean pluralizing the text addressing contemporary concerns about border control and citizenship. This rereading of the work maintains thus that Shakespeare is a dynamic cultural text that continues to be read and taught with a consciousness of the changing pressures of a globalized world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. And again, we move on to the next presenter, who's again from Sister Nivedita University, Debkuna Rai. Yes. Debkuna Rai, and her paper is titled Rewriting Rejection, the Deviant Heroine of the Taming of the Shrew.
Can I just have the first slide? Next slide after this. Yeah. Thank you. Mark Leary, with his colleagues, developed the sociometer theory, according to which an individual's self-esteem is a meter. It constantly measures through different social cues one's social value and acceptance. In more explicit terms, individuals tend to internalize societal rejection, resulting in lowered self-esteem. In Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew, Catherine Minola completely subverts such internalization, despite her complete rejection, not only from the mating market of Padua, but also from her own father. At the beginning of the play, Catherine receives an alarmingly brutal rejection from the suitors Gremio and Hortensio. Gremio even went so far as to want to see her publicly punished instead of marrying her. Despite such brutality, Catherine's narrative did not follow a self-agonizing soliloquy. She instantly reacted and did so with a pronounced humor and aggression. Next slide, please. As Shastri, Shojkov, and Shia demonstrated in this study, women are more prone towards internalizing poor feedback as evidence of their inability, as compared to men who tend to tie their failure to external factors like bad luck. As a result, Catherine's refusal to spiral down the rabbit hole of questioning her worth on facing rejection deems the female prescribed narrative invalid. Since no such candid studies are showing that such a gender-based difference when it comes to responding to rejection is biological, it is safe to say that it is a societal construct. Females have been prescribed the internalizing script by society itself, and Shakespeare's Shrew refuses such existence. This makes society uncomfortable, and as a result, it tries to find an inherent fault in her character. Next slide, please. So the term shrew is more of a punishing label for a defiance to a society as compared to a genuine moral flaw in her character. Before the process of taming begins for Catherine, she is rejected on multiple parameters, and her reactions to such exemplify how, instead of the feminine internalizing script, she has opted for the masculine externalizing one. After multiple other brutal rejections, Catherine finally weds Petruchio, who subjects her to harsh treatment that includes starving and also depriving her of sleep. Next slide, please. Such instances further stress the intent of deciding on the term taming in relation to Catherine in the play. It signifies the underlying motive of punishing someone to the extent that it will leave them no choice but to surrender. Even after being subjected to such tyrannical treatment from her husband, she attributes it to his evil intent and does not interpret it as a reflection of her ability to be loved. The lines, "If I be waspish, best before my sting," exhibits how Catherine endorses herself despite her character assassination and collective rejection from society. Next slide, please. Even though the term devil has developed into a gender-neutral adjective in the modern context, during the Elizabethan era of Shakespeare's time, it was still very much an adjective associated with the masculine sex. Similarly, there existed female-coded negative adjectives like hag or witch that Shakespeare himself had used adversely in his other plays like Macbeth and The Tempest to refer to the female adversaries. Hence, Catherine being referred to as a devil and fiend from hell agrees with the assumption that hers was a very masculine existence in a society which expected women to be more gentle, meek, and patient. By being compared to the absolute male figure of evil, her dehumanization happens with an added layer of gender transgression. Other than such gender dehumanization, her divine approach towards societal rules is not read as a mere social disobedience that needed correction, but as a cosmic disorder that had to be absolutely destroyed or exorcised. Next slide, please. Towards the end of the play, Petruchio is seen making a wager with his friends to see whose wife is the most obedient. The usage of the term obedience is quite interesting in the context that originally Catherine needed a moral correction because of her shrewishness. And terms like obedience are not generally used to answer questions regarding one's moral integrity. Instead, it emphasizes her now subservient nature towards male counterparts. Petruchio's dialogues are phrased in a manner that makes it look like he's asking Catherine to exhibit how well she has succumbed to the prescribed female narrative of serving men. Her speech towards the end of the play further reinstates my argument, which mainly consists of phrases like "thy lord, thy king, thy governor" in regards to her husband. It felt more like a rehearsed script devoid of any marked emotional spontaneity or vulnerability when it came to expressing her feelings towards her husband, leaving space for us to speculate whether her transformation was genuine or an orchestrated performance towards survival. The language and choice of words in her speech are so extreme that they nod towards an underlying sense of satire. Furthermore, she proceeds to state how women are bound to serve, love, and obey, and resistance is futile. According to Catherine, to put it precisely, women are provided with a Hobson's choice of either falling in line and being subservient or seizing their existence. Hence, the fact that the driving force behind her public sermon of obedience is a well-articulated survival strategy performed with a surgical precision is less of a debate and more of a conclusion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My paper, it grows out of a fairly simple observation. In India, Shakespeare becomes a familiar name from school onwards. We meet him through abridged tales, simplified versions of the plays, selected scenes, and sonnets. Students of English literature then encounter him again in a more formal and sustained way at the college and university level. So Shakespeare is already part of the Indian literary education. What I want to talk about today is Shakespeare in the Bengali home. Growing up with Bengali as my mother tongue, I noticed a pattern that seems worth studying. In several Bengali households with some investment in books, films, music, and what we casually describe as being cultural, certain books are present almost by default. There would be Tagore, often in the form of Robindro Rachonaboli. There would be Nojrul's Sanchita. And in many cases, there would also be Shakespeare in Bengali translation, often the volume associated with Shanot Kumar Chattopadhyay. This points to a shared Bengali social idea of what a cultivated household sometimes look like. Now, a paper, it takes that recognition seriously. I argue that Shakespeare, who entered Bengal through colonial education and the prestige of English literary culture, has gradually acquired a different kind of presence through translation and domestic circulation. In a Bengali context, he has become familiar in a way that goes beyond the textbook and syllabus. That is what I mean by the phrase, our very own. Bengali translation has brought Shakespeare into the material and symbolic life of the household. He becomes part of Bengali literary memory. He becomes one of those books that a family keeps, displays, and recognizes as worth having. This paper adopts an interpretive cultural studies approach to the Bengali home as a site of everyday literary culture. It combines the three lenses of domestic cultural practice, the notion of cultural capital, and translation as vernacularization. My paper is not based on any survey data. I'm reading the material presence and cultural recognizability of translated Shakespeare in Bengali households as evidence of a larger process through which a canonical writer becomes domestically familiar and locally meaningful. Raymond Williams' well-known phrase, culture is ordinary, from his 1958 essay, Culture is Ordinary, is useful here because it allows us to take home seriously as a site where literary value is lived, repeated, and absorbed in everyday life. Bourdieu's formulation of cultural capital is also important for this paper. In his essay, The Forms of Capital, he describes cultural capital in embodied, objectified, and institutionalized forms. That distinction is especially helpful here. The books themselves function as objectified cultural capital, while the disposition to value literature, to recognize certain books as markers of refinement, and to inhabit a self-consciously cultivated domestic world belongs to the embodied cultural capital. Translation is central to this process. Regarding that, Tejaswini Niranjana's citing translation, history, post-structuralism, and colonial context is helpful here because it reminds us that translation, especially in colonial and post-colonial situations, cannot be treated as a neutral transfer from one language to another. It is bound up with questions of power, authority, and cultural location. In fact, her argument that translation can also be reconceived as a site of resistance and transformation is especially relevant for my paper. I use the term vernacularization for the shift. I mean the process through which a canonical writer becomes more proximate within a local language world. Shakespeare does not cease to be canonical, but he can be encountered through Bengali rather than through English alone, and that changes the cultural terms of access. And at this point, I want to make a related claim. Through translation, he does not simply leave behind the hegemonic prestige of the English canon. That would be too simple. What happens instead is more complex. He begins to occupy a hybrid cultural position. The colonial afterlife remains. In fact, the aura of Shakespeare as a major world author, it remains. But all of this is now mediated through Bengali language and Bengali domestic space. Translation does not cancel hegemony. It unsettles its terms by relocating Shakespeare within another cultural world. And this is why I find vernacularization so important. It is not merely access in a technical sense. Rather, it's also a shift in the cultural function. In many Bengali households, books do more than provide reading material. They also signal refinement, education, and a certain relation to culture. To own a Tagore or Nojrul in collected form is to place oneself within a recognized literary world. And these books, they help define what a respectable, educated, or culturally alert household looks like. When Shakespeare in Bengali translation, it appears alongside them, he enters that same symbolic field. And in that term, the Bengali household bookshelf is not just a storage space for books, but it is also a visible arrangement of the cultural capital. And this is why the recognizability of this bookshelf, it also matters. It shows that books circulate as cultural signs. They indicate aspiration, inheritance, and identity. And seen in this light, Shanot Kumar Chattopadhyay's translation, it becomes especially important. And in this paper, I read his translation less as an isolated linguistic act and more as a cultural object. What does it mean that Shakespeare is encountered as a Bengali volume in domestic space? What happens when his translated works become normal, even expected within Bengali literary households? I think this is where Shakespeare's cultural life in Bengal takes on another dimension. He is no longer confined to the distant authority of English canon. Through translation, he becomes part of the local ecology of reading. He enters a world in which books carry emotional and symbolic weight. He joins a domestic canon shaped by language, habit, and prestige. And in that sense, the phrase our very own, it becomes analytically useful because his works become culturally proximate without ceasing to carry their earlier prestige. This also brings me to the final conceptual point which I want to make. If we stay strictly within a cultural studies framework, especially one attentive to cultural capital, vernacularization can be understood as a counter-hegemonic move. I would even say it approaches what we might call counter-mimicry. Bengali culture does not simply mimic the prestige of Shakespeare as an English author. Instead, translation appropriates that prestige and refunctions or repositions it. It brings Shakespeare into another language, another habit, and another habitus, and another domestic logic of value. So what emerges is not passive imitation, but active cultural resituation. The translated Shakespeare volume becomes a way of taking hold of canonical authority without leaving it unchanged. So the larger claim of this paper is this: to understand Shakespeare's afterlife in Bengal, we have to look beyond the classroom, beyond the textbooks. We have to look at translation, domestic circulation, and the cultural meaning of the book ownership. And once we do that, Shakespeare appears in a different light altogether. He's still the Bard of Avon. He's still tied to a long history of English literary authority, but in Bengali translation, he also becomes a familiar presence in the ordinary household, one that is retained, displayed, and culturally recognized. To conclude, this paper argues that the Bengali home is an important site for thinking about his place in Shakespeare's place in Bengali culture. Translation has enabled his works to move from canonical distance to vernacular familiarity. It has given him continuity beyond formal study. It has also placed him in a hybrid cultural position where inherited prestige, it survives but is mediated through local language and domestic value. That is the sense in which Shakespeare becomes our very own, not by losing his history, but by gaining a place within ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dipanita. And can I open the floor for questions and comments now? Sir, would you like to ask questions?
First of all, I must say, sitting here, I was very impressed by what I just heard. Because you people have thought newly, differently, and deeply into the plays of Shakespeare. And what really struck me was the range of approaches and the range of perspectives that you have brought to your understanding and our understanding of William Shakespeare. The first paper that I didn't hear the whole of it, but at the first, what was it? The biological, organic nature of Cymbeline. Now, would this model be applicable to any other of the last plays of Shakespeare? Or is it specific only to Cymbeline in your reading?
Yes, sir. Can you please repeat the question once more? Yes.
Well, it's simple. I mean, this is a very interesting reading of a very canonical Shakespearean text, Cymbeline, right? Now, I was wondering, you make out a very persuasive case, and quite frankly, this is a perspective I never had imagined to have applied to a text like that. Now, my question is, you say that this is you are talking about, Cymbeline as part of the larger set of the last plays of Shakespeare. Would the perspective that you use, the theorization that you use, would that frame be also, useful in reading another last play of Shakespeare, or the other last plays? I was thinking of Tempest. I mean, I was wondering how you would apply that to Tempest, if possible.
Actually, in the current readings of Shakespeare and the papers that are being written, they're actually writing it on Deleuze's rhizome, which is a horizontal root system in case of this. But in Cymbeline, specifically, it has been criticized for its messy plot. That's why I've used the thing of mycology here. And to be honest, I have not applied it to any other play. Recently, I've been reading a book by Jennifer Croft, which is the extension of Irene Ray. It's enriched with mushroom things and everything. That led me to mycology. And then I kind of intended to pick up any of the plays that is not really less read, but I would always say that is not widely talked about, like Cymbeline. We did not hear the name of Cymbeline throughout the lectures as well, actually. So that's why I intended to take up something and do something unique. That's why. That's the point. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a kind of comment maybe or slightly a question also, because when you were talking about this particular lens, you were definitely talking about this lens challenging the anthropocentric point of view. And in that sense, I was thinking of the Renaissance, which is very much an anthropocentric culture. So in that sense, would you say that Shakespeare is deliberately challenging that culture, or is it just a one-off?
In Cymbeline, Shakespeare has actually used certain ecological words, intentionally, deliberately, probably. Well, I can't say about him, but at least that's what I think. Because when I was reading the play, especially in scene 5, act 1, there are several ecological and biological words. So we can actually say that he was challenging the framework.
And I think I kind of go along with Sir in urging you to see whether it can be incorporated within some other plays of Shakespeare as well, so that we can build a sustained argument, because it's a very interesting argument that you took up.
Thank you.
Any questions for any of the other presenters, or questions or comments? Bipasha and Shomosri, again a very interesting take on how you read A Comedy of Errors. In that sense, I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the maritime law that you kind of mentioned, but you didn't. I don't think you delved deeper into it. Yeah. So how is that featuring into this othering and the otherness?
Actually, they are from different cities, and due to shipwreck, they got separated in their childhood. And their father, Aegeon, went to search for the Antiphilus, and got arrested by the Duke of Solinus. That's why I use the maritime, and there is a border control, border rule everywhere in the world.
I understand, but I'm just wondering how you're drawing the parallel between contemporary border conflict and the specific legal context that in the background of which this particular play is set.
We haven't researched it now, but we will go into it.
Yeah, because since you're talking about world literature, I think that might be a good...
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
That would be a good enough place. Okay, again, they've got a very interesting paper, obviously. In the context that you talked about with respect to, Catherine challenging this obviously patriarchal construction of the feminine, how do you look at the word tame and its relation to the idea of bestiality specifically, more than dehumanization? Because when you tame a beast, you tame an animal. So in that sense, how do you look at the word tame in Taming of the Shrew?
Ma'am, like I've stated that I personally, shrew is a term which talks about a person's moral integrity. So in this context, like I've mentioned, later on when Petruchio is seen making a wager with his friend, he never mentions, not even for once, mentions about her kindness or anything. Like when he's showing off to his friend, he's showing off to his friend how obedient his wife is. So the question is of subservience. It is never of kindness or of humility or any of that. So the question was never of moral integrity. The question was always about how subservient she is, or anybody, in a matter of fact. So in that sense, taming is like a social coercion, in the sense that it has to like I've mentioned, the Hobson's choice. They're not giving you a choice. You have to do that or you have to stop. Like, it's demons, devils. These are like exorcised. We cannot reason with them. We don't give them that space. Okay, you're a devil. You can, have that space. You can be better. No, you have to be exorcised. You have to be completely destroyed. So I think taming, in the sense that it was like a Hobson's choice given to her. You have to either fall in line or you have to cease your existence.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm coming in at it from, because there's the obliteration and then there's the idea of taming. And
yes.
What you specifically, I was very taken by the last part of your analysis, where you talk about the fact that she's performing obedience.
Yes.
Because that in itself is challenging the dehumanization. You tame a beast. She's acting almost bestial in her initial kind of
yes, right.
aggressive challenge to patriarchal restrictions and coercions. And obviously that is going to be framed in the language of bestiality. But when
yes.
you're talking, and therefore the idea of taming, but what she's doing in the end is very
she's
much
performing.
what a human being would
yes,
do.
Right.
So
right.
the whole idea of performativity and using a kind of facade and an ironical facade, that itself is challenging and making the idea of taming almost like a parody. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Deepanita, again, a very interesting paper. But what I was wondering is this politics of power, really, because when you're talking about Shakespeare taking its prized position in the Bengali shelves, so aren't we in some ways really talking about a transfer of authority from, the post-colonial hangover, let's say, where we are revering the dead white guys, as opposed to the Bengali household, where there is again that sense of cultural elitism that is coming in. So can you talk a little bit more about how the elitism, the power politics really survives? It doesn't really go away. It just shifts place. And in that sense, how has Shakespeare changed? Because the power politics still remains, attached to the name of Shakespeare, if you will.
In fact, I'm still looking into it. I'm still looking for an answer. I figured out that it's more of a highbrow culture when people, they mostly, especially the English, the people, students pursuing English literature, they talk about it. So oftentimes it's only restricted to their understanding, how they're perceiving, how they're dissecting, or how they're getting into the discussion. And actually, how this idea came to my mind, I found this particular translation in one of the influencers' pictures, background. Pujarini Pradhan. So she talks about these things a lot. And then that basically piqued my interest because that highbrow culture, that elitism, yeah, it's still there. I can't say that it's totally dismissed as of yet. But the fact that it doesn't solely belong to this category of the students who are actually dealing with it or the scholars, it's reaching beyond that is something that I'm still trying to look into.
Yeah, I think what would be interesting for you to look at, and I'm glad that you brought up this influencer thing, because when you were arguing about your paper, that is what I was thinking of, because that how has translation of Shakespeare allowed it, or has it allowed Shakespeare to percolate into the popular culture, into the popular domain? So I think what you can definitely look into going forward are terms like local, like domestic, because the moment you're talking about an influencer, it's not domestic anymore. You're entering into the public field, the popular field. So I think those terminologies, I'm sure you're going to look into it and nuance it further in your later paper.
I'm very glad that this came up, actually. Because if you look at the 1960s films, or if you go by the kind of plays that even Utpal Datta did as part of the Shakespeare Wala, oeuvre of plays, you will see that the Bengali audience was quite familiar with Shakespeare in English. Because even in a film like Shoptopodi by Ajoy Kar, which is extremely popular, Shakespeare does not feature in Bengali. Shakespeare features in a very Shakespearean English, because Desdemona is played by, Shashi Kapoor's wife, Jennifer. And Utpal Datta plays the part of Othello in impeccable British English. So basically, I think this more relates to, and this I think is the most important point that you should look into. The translation of Shakespeare was not really intended to people who read Shakespeare, because people who read Shakespeare in English. They absolutely targeted the women in the household, because women had not been exposed to English education to that extent. You actually found it in Pujarini Pradhan's household, and they would have struggled with exposure to English. Their household would have struggled with exposure to English. So I think that democratization itself makes this paper terribly interesting, because different books in a household actually caters to different audiences. A house can, boast of an entire oeuvre of English literature. Some would be targeted to children. Like, we remember reading Charles and Mary Lamb when we were in class 6 or 7. Like, I think class 5 or 6. So we were very familiar with Shakespeare. Even before, as an ICSE student, I touched Merchant of Venice. I knew who Shakespeare was. And for that, I did not need to read Shakespeare in English. In fact, my household had no books of Shakespeare in Bengali in translation. So the access to books, I think, is also about the access to the language itself. And you must question that access when you're talking of the Bengali household, especially when that book was brought into the household, under which circumstances, who brought those books, and who the targeted members of the family are who read those books. I think that's an important thing to look at, right, when you're looking at these things. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any further questions or comments? If not, I think we are just about, we are just on time. It's 3:15. We are exactly on time. So thank you all very much for such a diverse range of papers. And we look forward to interacting with everybody further over tea.
It has been a wonderful session, Now I request the chair to kindly present the certificates to our presenters as a token of appreciation for their insightful contribution. Beginning with yes. Next, Shomosri Dotto. Ms. Pipasha Mondol. Ms. Depkonna Roy. And Ms. Deepanita Nath. Thank you.
How long has she been lost? King, the king's to blame. Hear thou incestuous murder.
I would request the audience to kindly settle down for the next session, which is a plenary session by Dr. Gargi Bhattacharya. This session will be chaired by our Honorable Dean, Professor Dr. Shubidhar sir. It's my immense pleasure to formally introduce him once again, although he does not need any introduction. Professor Dr. Shubidhar is an internationally renowned scholar who has taught for nearly 35 years in Rabindra Bharati University, having served as the director of the University School of Languages and Culture and the honorary director of the Tagore Gandhi Institute. He has also had the distinction of serving for a time as the officiating Vice Chancellor of Rabindra Bharati University on the orders of the Honorable Chancellor and the Higher Education Council of the Government of West Bengal. He is at present serving in Sister Nivedita University in Newtown, Kolkata as the Dean of Schools of Humanities, International Languages and Social Sciences and the mentor and advisor of the Department of English. Apart from this, he is the President of Shakespeare Society of Eastern India, an organization functioning since 1984. Professor Dhar has conducted postdoctoral research in Cambridge University and has made academic presentations in Oxford University, Ohio State University, and ULAB, Bangladesh. He has participated in academic interactions with faculty in Morris College, USA, Colorado University, and the University of Denver. He has had the distinction of having delivered conference keynote addresses, refresher, orientation course, and faculty development program lectures throughout India in at least 14 states, including Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Delhi, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Manipur, Mizoram, Pondicherry, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, etc. He has published 10 books and scores of research papers and is at present co-editor of 2 UGC listed journals, which was previously, including in the long-running International Journal of Cultural Studies and Social Sciences. So it's my pleasure to invite him on stage. Sir, would you please? And I would invite our Honorable HOD Ma'am, Dr. Priyanka Chakraborty, to felicitate our Honorable Dean, sir. Big round of applause. Now is the time to formally introduce our speaker for the 4th plenary address, Dr. Gargi Bhattacharya, who actually needs no introduction because we have already met her and she has chaired numerous sessions in this conference, and today she is going to speak for at the plenary lecture. Dr. Gargi Bhattacharya is an assistant professor teaching in the Department of English of Swami Nishambhalananda Girls College, affiliated to the University of Calcutta. She topped her MA from Jawaharlal Nehru University or JNU and holds an MPhil and a PhD degree from the same university. She has taught in St. Stephen's College, then affiliated to Delhi University, Shivaji College, affiliated to Delhi University, Motilal Nehru College and ARSD College, both under Delhi University. She is a notable and widely published scholar, poet, author, graphic novelist, and translator, and specializes in literary theory, Western philosophy, and postmodern fiction. She is also a social activist and runs her own NGO, ECHOS Project, dedicated to the children's education, preservation of intangible cultural heritages, and environmental sustainability. Ma'am, would you please come up to the stage? And I would like to request our Honorable Head of the Department, Dr. Priyanka Chakraborty, to felicitate ma'am. Ma'am, you're all set.
I think of all the things that I've ever received on a stage, aromatherapy is the most appropriate for jaded scholars. I just want to read out a couple of lines about what this paper is all about, so that before we jump right onto the paper, I basically wanted to show you a few minutes of what we're going to talk about. So this talk examines Grand Theft Hamlet, a groundbreaking documentary released in 2024 that chronicles the attempts of two out-of-work actors, Sam Crane and Mark Oosterveen, to stage a full production of Shakespeare's Hamlet within the notoriously violent and chaotic online world of Grand Theft Auto Online. The film serves as a profound case study for the appropriation and survival of classical theatre in a postmodern, post-pandemic context. Set against the backdrop of a world still grappling with the isolation of COVID-19, the documentary transforms the game's virtual city of Los Santos, a sprawling digital landscape typically dedicated to hedonistic anarchy, into an unlikely performance space. I would request our technicians to go to the beginning of the film. Yeah, just so a few minutes of introduction. Audio.
Dodgems. They handle like dodgems. Yeah. You can get away from the police in a golf buggy. No. You could try. Whoa! You caught some wicked air there. God, I wish I was actually on a beach and was able to just stroll into the sea and cool off. It's just making me quite envious. This is the equivalent of like being really hungry and watching a cooking show or something.
Let's try and see if we can win some money, shall we?
Hey, what took you so long to call? Right.
Looks like an impotent rage.
Okay, I think you can pause this here. You can pause. So this is the game world that we're talking about. The entire production is situated inside this. All the characters are actually virtual avatars. Right, so that is to introduce the idea of this game is very important to the talk. So the title of the talk is All the Games a Stage, Grand Theft Hamlet and the Shakespearean Heist. In the annals of theatrical history, few productions can claim to have held auditions amidst drive-by shootings, rehearse soliloquies while dodging military helicopters, or perform the final duel while other participants attempted to detonate the stage with rocket launchers. Yet, Grand Theft Hamlet 2024, the documentary film directed by Sam Crane and Pinny Grillis, chronicles precisely such a production. The film follows Crane and fellow actor Mark Oosterveen, both unemployed theatre professionals during the COVID-19 pandemic, as they attempt to stage what is arguably Shakespeare's most famous tragedy within the notoriously anarchic online world of Grand Theft Auto Online. This talk therefore now examines how the documentary appropriates Shakespeare in the post-apocalyptic, post-COVID context. In the post-pandemic context, when the theatres shut down, we are first going to understand what this meant for live performers, theatre performers. The COVID-19 pandemic fundamentally disrupted the relationship between performers, audiences, and theatrical spaces. When lockdowns forced theatres to close their doors in March 2020, an entire ecosystem of live performances ground to a halt. For actors like Crane and Oosterveen, the sudden silence was not merely economic, it was existential. As Crane reflects in the documentary, I quote, "Theatre had been my life for 20 years and suddenly there was no stage, no audience, no purpose." This vacuum created a peculiar form of mourning, not just for lost income, but for the communal ritual that theatre represents. In a world defined by social distancing, the very concept of gathering to witness a story felt impossibly archaic. The only witnesses were scrollers and gamers, and the only space of performance were screens. The pandemic constituted a scenario akin to what science fiction author Will Mackintosh called a soft apocalypse in one of his short stories. Not the total annihilation of civilization, but the collapse of the cultural infrastructure that gives life meaning. It is precisely this hollowed out landscape that drives Crane and Oosterveen into the digital wilderness of Grand Theft Auto Online. Now we go to the next part of the talk where I try to make sense of the virtual world as performance space. Grand Theft Auto Online presents itself as the antithesis of everything theatre represents. This multiplayer phenomena by Rockstar Games is designed for chaos. Players roam a sprawling fictional metropolis called Los Santos, a veritable criminal cornucopia, stealing cars, committing armed robbery, and engaging in arbitrary violence against one another. It is a world without consequences, where death is temporary and morality is irrelevant. As Oosterveen observes early in the film, I quote, "This place is designed to be meaningless. That's what makes it interesting for Hamlet." The game's architecture becomes both an obstacle and an opportunity. Its engine, normally employed for spectacular crashes, is repurposed for blocking scenes. Its vast open world, typically traversed at high speed in stolen vehicles, becomes a canvas for theatrical exploration. The documentary captures the strange beauty of this appropriation. Hamlet's soliloquies delivered atop skyscrapers and blimps, while distant gunfire provides unintentional percussion. Ophelia's scenes of insanity and cognitive dysfunction performed in abandoned warehouses while other players' cars scream past outside. This kind of repurposing echoes what performance theorist Richard Schreiner calls environmental theatre, the breaking down of traditional boundaries between performance space and audience space, between actor and spectator. In Grand Theft Auto Online, however, these boundaries are not so much dissolved as rendered palimpsestic, as they continuously render layers of meaning over one another. The inherently chaotic, numbing world of Grand Theft Auto, amid an existentially fraught pandemic lockdown, becomes the perfect space for one to understand, perhaps, the true meaning of to be or not to be. The audience consists of players who have no idea a performance is occurring, who may stumble upon a rehearsal and respond with confusion, curiosity, or explosive violence. Now I go to the logistics of digital staging. The practical challenges of staging Shakespeare in this environment are both absurd and profound. Casting requires navigating a world where potential actors may be located in different time zones, have unpredictable work schedules, and possess no particular theatrical training at all. The documentary captures the mundanity of this process. Players gathering in virtual parking lots, reading sides into their headsets, while explosions bloom on the horizon. However, it also draws our attention to the unlikely way that digital avatars of all kinds are actually all of us in continuous performance as digital nomads, jumping from one platform to another and changing guises accordingly. Such is the scenario when rustic mascara and oosters, the digital avatars of Sam Crane and Mark Oosterveen, stumble upon the abandoned amphitheater called Vinewood Bowl. modeled after the Hollywood Bowl of Los Angeles. That Los Santos is visualized, according to Erin Sullivan, as a hyper-violent simulacrum of Los Angeles, also underscores the theme of projecting performative spaces upon each other, much in the truest way that Shakespeare perhaps intended. Rehearsals often present their own conundrums. Synchronizing leisure time across international boundaries requires the kind of logistical coordination normally associated with military operations. Whenever players do assemble, there is absolutely no guarantee that the session will remain peaceful or shall even reach a productive conclusion. In one memorable sequence, a full rehearsal of the to-be or not-to-be soliloquy is interrupted when a player in a jet fighter strafes the location, scattering the cast and forcing everyone to respawn. Respawning is a gaming term. I think most of you know this. When a digital avatar dies, in a few minutes, they can actually respawn and start, playing from where they left off. The moment is simultaneously frustrating and strangely appropriate. Hamlet's contemplation of death interrupted by its digital simulation. The introduction of props into this environment reveals the creative possibilities of constraint. In traditional theatre, props are carefully designed objects that serve specific narrative functions. In Grand Theft Auto Online, actors must make do with whatever the game provides. A messenger arrives on a stolen motorcycle. The player's court becomes a gathering of avatars in absurdist costumes, clowns, soldiers, and civilians in Hawaiian shirts. Yorick's skull, famously held by Hamlet in the gravedigger scene, is represented by a novelty skull mask available in the game's virtual store. These limitations paradoxically echo the conditions of Elizabethan theatre, where smaller companies performed with minimal sets and contemporary costumes, trusting the audience's imagination to supply the rest. There was this very famous sentence, when I say a horse, see horse. So now I move to the chaotic element of the landscape and try to prove that this chaos is actually a collaborative element that the directors and the actors incorporated in the digital rendition of the play. What distinguishes Grand Theft Hamlet from other attempts to stage Shakespeare in virtual spaces is its firm embracing of utter chaos, wanton violence, and disorder, not as obstacles, but as unwitting collaborators. The documentary refuses to present the game's unpredictability as mere nuisance. Instead, it suggests that the anarchy of Los Santos is an interpretative lens through which the play's themes are refracted. This becomes the most evident in the treatment of violence. Hamlet is, after all, a play about murder, its contemplation, execution, and consequences. When performed in a world where violence is meaningless and death temporary, these themes acquire new resonance. The play's famous question, to be or not to be, takes on different weight in a universe where not to be lasts approximately 15 seconds before a potential respawn. As one participant observes, I quote from the film, "We are all immortal here. What does Hamlet's fear of death mean when death is just a loading screen?" However, just outside of this hyperspace of digital immortality looms the threat of real fatalities in the world torn apart by the most horrific pandemic that the world has recently witnessed. This tension is reflected in the scenes of intense dramatic conflict, such as the closet scene between Hamlet and Gertrude, or the confrontation with Claudius at prayer, which play out against a backdrop of casual mayhem. Random players wander through the frame, occasionally stopping to watch before resuming their rampage. The audience are not, therefore, just digital or immortal. They are often just nomadic and largely nonchalant, going in and out of their roles and never truly sitting down for a performance. The effect is not distracting but illuminating. It reminds us that Hamlet himself performs his grief in a court that has already moved on, that his crisis of meaning unfolds in a world indifferent to his suffering. Now I want to talk a little bit about Shakespeare and the postmodern condition and how this appropriation signals the transition of classical texts into the postmodern world. What then does Grand Theft Hamlet reveal about Shakespeare's place in the postmodern, nay, post-truth world? This question is perhaps the most central to the understanding of the documentary's cultural significance. Postmodernism, as theorized by figures like Jean-Francois Lyotard and Frederick Jameson, is characterized by the collapse of grand narratives, the blurring of boundaries between high and low culture, and the proliferation of simulation over authenticity. Grand Theft Hamlet embodies all three conditions in its concept, performance, and execution. Not only is the play performed by avatars inside a video game scenario, it is also screenshot and edited to form the final cut in a documentary form. A stage within a stage within a stage, which is a veritable hyperspatial meta-theater after Shakespeare's own making. So I want you to understand what has happened during the making of the documentary. What happens is when you play a game, there is an actual provision of it being recorded on your screens. So the entire team, so how it happened is Sam Crane met Mark Oosterveen during their playing of the game itself. So they met in the game world. They don't know, they made no plans. So when they're in the game world, they're absolutely frustrated because their theaters have closed, they're not finding work, there's absolute, ennui and they keep discussing what they can do to break out of this, absolutely mind-numbing state of lockdown. And they suddenly figure out that a wonderful way of breaking out of it would be to stage Hamlet in this world. So what happens is Sam Crane's girlfriend, Penny Grillis, was also available to them at that point of time. She was living in the same house as Sam Crane, and she's an editor. So what they did was, while they kept attempting and reattempting, there are so many failed attempts. They sort of call for auditions, and different people from different parts of the world arrive for auditions. Some are serious, some just come and randomly kill people. So all of this is being recorded on their screens constantly, right? And the last item, the final item, the documentary itself, was basically made by editing this entire process, which is like hundreds of hours of gameplay, and inside that gaming world, there's hundreds of avatars looming, coming for auditions, having failed auditions. Then they find a really great guy to play Hamlet, and when he says to be or not to be, people start crying, and they're like, "Oh, this is so great!" And it so happens that this guy gets work, and he cannot refuse work because he's a starving some character in some other part of the world. And he says, "I'm so sorry, I have to bow out of this, because I need a real world job." So he has a job and he flees. So somebody else is taken in his place and plays Hamlet. I think Sam Crane plays Hamlet or something. So this is so in itself so illuminating about staging something in the virtual reality. Because there is no guarantee that there is an absolute... They can't find rehearsal spaces. Their rehearsal spaces are bombed. Their rehearsal spaces are strafed. They find, empty lots for rehearsals. One of the very famous sequences of Hamlet takes place on a blimp, which is like floating midair, and characters randomly jump from that blimp. Or they don't jump, they basically lose balance and they fall. So this is all constantly happening. And what happened is, at the very end, they sat through and sifted through hours and hours of hundreds of these sequences of staging of the play, the actual play, and they arrive at their conclusion. And at the conclusion, we don't get to see the whole play, obviously. That would have made the documentary like 7-hour documentary or something. But we see certain scenes as it finally happened during the final staging. The real, achievement of the cast and crew was that they finally did stage Hamlet in its entirety in the game world. The entirety of the play was staged. Right. So I go back to the talk. The grand narrative of Shakespeare as the pinnacle of Western culture, requiring reverent preservation in hallowed institutions, collapses utterly when his words are spoken by pixelated gangsters in a virtual strip club. Yet, the text survives this desecration. Indeed, it thrives, stripped of the cultural scaffolding that typically surrounds it. The velvet curtains, the scholarly introductions, the hush of the audience, Shakespeare's language gets to stand on its own. The documentary suggests that it not only passes muster, but also represents the very pinnacle of artistic mediation that the post-pandemic world is capable of. The blurring of high and low culture is not merely aesthetic, but structural. The production renders no apologia for its medium. It does not attempt to elevate the game to the level of art or to drag Shakespeare down to the level of crass popular entertainment, and in between find something poignant and meaningful. It occupies the space between categories, demonstrating that these categories were always somewhat arbitrary. As cultural theorist Marjorie Garber notes, Shakespeare has always been popular culture. The distinction between high and low Shakespeare is a 19th century invention that the plays themselves consistently resist. Grand Theft Hamlet proves her point by finding Shakespeare precisely where he is not supposed to be. The question of simulation versus authenticity haunts the entire project. Are these actors really performing Hamlet in a simulated hyperspace? Or are they playing a video game about performing Hamlet? Or is it a documentary about the video game where the play is being performed? The documentary refuses to resolve this ambiguity, instead dwelling in it. When players log off, their avatars freeze mid-gesture, frozen in digital amber until the next session. When someone is killed during a performance, they respawn and join the scene. This is not theatre as we have known it, but it is also not theatre. It exists in the interstice, the gap between categories that the postmodern celebrates. Perhaps the most significant implication of Grand Theft Hamlet is its radical democratization of Shakespeare. Traditional theatre excludes by necessity ticket prices, geographical locations, cultural capital, the simple fact of having an evening free. Grand Theft Auto Online excludes by different criteria, but it includes millions whom traditional theatre never reaches. By staging Shakespeare within this space, the production makes the players available to an audience that would never seek them out. This availability extends to participation. The casting process is open to anyone with a copy of the game and a headset. Players with no theatrical experience find themselves speaking some of the most famous lines in English literature. The results are uneven. Some performances are terrible, others surprisingly moving. But the very fact of their occurrence matters. Shakespeare becomes not a museum piece to be admired from a distance, but a living text to be attempted, failed at, and reattempted over and over. The documentary captures one such moment when a player who stumbled upon the production is recruited to read a few lines. His delivery is halting, his microphone crackling, his understanding of the text minimal. Yet, when he finishes, there is a pause, and someone says, I quote, "That was actually really good." The moment is small but significant. It suggests that Shakespeare's power survives imperfect execution, and the plays can speak through anyone willing to speak to them. Before I go to the conclusion, I would request the technical group to please play the last part of the documentary so that you have a glimpse of what is being talked about in the plenary.
How long has she been lost?
The king's to blame. Here, thou incestuous, murderous, damned Dane, follow my mother!
It's just a sad exchange. Forgiveness with me. Noble Hamlet, mine and my father's death come not upon thee, nor thine on me.
Heaven make me free of it. I follow thee. I am dead, Horatio. Wretched queen, adieu. You that look pale and tremble at this chance, that are but mutes or audience to this act, had I but time, as this fell sergeant Death is strict in his arrest, oh, I could tell you, but let it be. Oh, Horatio, I am dead. Thou livest. Report me in my cause aright to the unsatisfied. If thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from felicity a while, and in this harsh world draw thy breath in pain, to tell my story. The rest is silence.
Look at the lines underneath Hamlet, that it has chosen the easy way out, which is when a character chooses to die, basically.
Ladies and gentlemen, our revels now are ended.
Woohoo! Well done, guys! We got there! You may kill each other! Our name's
Sorry, Jan. Okay, in-game audience, you're welcome to come. We're gonna have a little after party. Dante, I think maybe can we all go to your nightclub?
The option will come up to pay to get in, but we might be overcrowding it.
Dante's just made it free.
Oh, it's free.
So since this is now working, can we go back to the part that didn't play? So where they're trying to hold, basically they're trying to hold the initial auditions. No, further up, please. Like maybe 5 minutes into the video. 5-10 minutes, yes. Yes.
Oh, someone's here, look. Hi. Oh, look, someone's turned up. Is that you? Hi. Someone's here. Mark, we've got some. Are you going to come and watch our play?
Have we? Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah.
So this is the Vinewood Bowl, like the Hollywood Bowl. This is where they
it's
start.
a bit unorthodox. I recommend. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for coming. See our performance. It's nice to have an audience, even if it's just one. Right, okay. Oh, look, we've got another audience member here. This is Hamlet, William Shakespeare's Hamlet. I believe this is the first time it's ever been performed at the Vinewood Bowl. If I could just request that you refrain from killing each other. And don't kill the actors either. Yeah, start, Mark. You start.
Who's there?
Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself.
Long live the king.
Bernardo?
He.
You come most carefully upon your hour.
It's now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco.
For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold and I am sick at heart.
Have you had quiet, guard?
Not a mouse stirring.
Well, good night. If you do meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste.
I think I hear them. Stan Ho, who's there?
Friends to this ground, I think?
I don't think so.
And leechmen to the Dane.
Shit, that's the fucking police.
Oh, farewell, honest soldier. Who has relieved you?
Bernardo has my place. Give you good night.
Hola, Bernardo.
Ah, shit.
Say what, is Horatio there?
Fuck. Alright, we did pretty well to get as far as we did there.
The fucking cops turned up in a helicopter.
This is the person who has edited the documentary Pinny Grillis.
Do I choose one that looks like my mother?
If you like. So I wouldn't call...
No. Oh my God. I mean, I would like to look slightly like Tilda Swinton, to be honest. Oh, that's quite cool. You know what? I'm so sick of Hackney. This is going to be a great escape. It's like going on holiday, isn't it? Without going on holiday. Oh my God, who's he? I'm gonna mess you up. Fuck.
You alright?
Yeah, there's someone just tried to steal my car, so I just kind of killed...
Can't be fair.
I'm a grown,
I want to come
big-ass woman.
meet you in the session, and then you can come to my apartment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What happens there?
No, anything.
Oh my God, it's like going out with you again. Like, we're just starting a relationship. I'm just like, you know, we just started dating and you're taking me to your place. It's quite exciting. You make me a drink?
If you just come up here...
How do I slap your ass? You really, yeah, I quite fancy you, actually.
It's quite romantic up here, don't you think?
So this is the person, this is the avatar who finally ends up playing Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, not really. No, it's shit. Everything's shit. I have nothing now.
Please pause. So I think this is very clear to you, all of you by now that the embodiment of the characters itself is very Hamletian. Look at how this guy is behaving. Look at the ennui of the character. Look at what he's saying. He's saying that everything is shit here. I have nothing. So basically this is as close as, you know, us getting to the Hamlet, the core of the Hamlet character as this character is getting. Can you just move up a little bit and show a few of the last scenes, before the last scene stages? Yes.
Me. You know, this is how I feel about the world. You know, I felt that as so many people did at times in their life. You know, I have a labour wherefore I lost all my mirth. Why am I feeling like this? And look at this world, isn't it amazing? Isn't it fucking beautiful? And yet also it's kind of disgusting. And look at humans. They're incredible, they're extraordinary creatures. And yet they're just pathetic pieces of dust as well. So that's what this world seems to be, so full of those contradictions that Hamlet expresses so fluently and yet so humanly inarticulately as well. And it's sort of so beautifully expressed in this world, that combination of absolute stunning beauty and grotesque, horrible violence as well.
Judgment.
So this is the dueling scene. We already saw this. Please, you can stop
again.
here actually. So I think we have got the idea of what happened during the staging. So I will now come to the concluding points of the talk and the post-apocalyptic possibilities of Shakespeare. Grand Theft Hamlet concludes not with triumph, but with persistence. The full production is eventually staged, though not without casualties. Players come and go, the violence continues, the performance is never perfect in the traditional sense. However, this imperfection is precisely the point of being in the midst of a post-COVID world, where traditional cultural institutions remain fragile, where the assumption that theatre will always be there has been shattered, and new, fractured and debilitated forms have emerged from the shadows to carry old texts forward. The documentary suggests that Shakespeare's future may lie not in preservation, but in appropriation, in the willingness of artists to take his plays into spaces he could never have imagined, and trust them to survive. The Grand Theft Auto platform, with its chaos and unpredictability, its strange beauty and casual violence, proves to be not an obstacle to theatrical meaning, but a generator of it. In Los Santos, as in Elsinore, something is rotten and something against all odds is also redeemed. As the film's final frames linger on an empty virtual stage, the sounds of gunfire echoing in the distance, we are left with a question that is also an answer. If Shakespeare can survive here, in this most unlikely of worlds, perhaps he can survive anywhere. The apocalypse, whether viral or digital, is not the end of theatre. It is simply a new stage. Thank you so much. You should all actually watch the documentary, like the total documentary.
Thank you, Gargi, for an excellent presentation, something that got me deeply thinking, equally disturbed. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions on this. Yes. Yeah, the standard was so high, it was ridiculous.
I really wanted to show the blimp scene. If you can search for the blimp scene and show it to people, it would be great. But I've forgotten the time lapse between the scenes. I think it's somewhere higher up. It's not being, we are not being able to find it, so I'll show it to you sometime.
Yeah, wonderful. Several observations from my side. First of all, I think this is what you may be calling theatre in the gap. The gap is, of course, the space between fractures, because this is what we are experiencing in this film, or whatever you call it, that we've just watched from thanks to you. Several things. Number one, my first question would be, this is, number one, still a celebration or a valorization of Shakespeare, because the Hamlet equation is very much prominent there. Number two, as you rightly pointed out, the use of the language. You see, these are interesting issues because, in a sense, this is weird Shakespeare. And yet, the weird Shakespeare is being familiarized in terms of the frame from Shakespeare and, as you rightly pointed out, the language of Shakespeare. How is this?
I think that is what drew my attention to this project. So I saw this not exactly when it came out, a few months later. By that time, the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic was already dying down. But when I watched it, I was extremely taken with it. I was extremely struck, especially by the fact that between all the real world, popular language, the way the characters are interacting with one another, there is this beautiful Shakespearean prose emerging in this landscape of utter chaos and violence. And I think that is where Shakespeare is winning, because the interstitial Shakespearean, productions, I have never seen one like this. I've seen street plays on Shakespeare, which are not very popular in India probably, but they're very popular abroad, like smaller companies performing Shakespeare with school children, with college kids. But this kind of a production actually takes you to real world problems as well. So for example, my first question was, how would people who are playing a game like this be attracted to that kind of prose? How would people who are murdering other people quite randomly, and they thrive in this, landscape of gangrenous criminality or violence, be moved by prose that is Shakespearean? So this is what, this is what it is like, I suppose, to feel that Shakespeare is not meant for just one kind of audience. It's not meant for the high or the low. It is absolutely contextual. So, for example, the scenes that we right now saw where, the guy lays down on the bed and he's saying things in his own language, but he is Hamlet. He's absolutely Hamlet, and that is why he embodies this entire production as kind of this motivational force which takes him through the pandemic, sort of. So I think one of the reasons that this happened was that human creativity must find some kind of an vent, some kind of an out, when everything seems to be dying around them. So those daily, I still remember that, we used to do this thing during the pandemic where every day we would go to that worldstat.org and see how many people died, how many people have got the disease, how many people are cured. And this phenomena itself was so dire, so exhaustingly existential, almost waiting for something, waiting for death. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't get it, but waiting for something is exhausting. And I think that's what human creativity stems from. The endless waiting gives you kind of a platform that, while we are waiting anyway, let's do something about it. And that's how this project sort of, took hold. It basically became this, really raison d'etre of these two actors who were out of work, they had no money, but they still wanted to do something, and they wanted to share their craft with other people who are completely clueless, obviously. There are characters here who don't speak English. There are mute characters who probably don't understand at all what is going on. Then obviously characters who are killing each other. And yet they did not let this deter them. I think it was something of a point that they were trying to prove, and they were willing to go to great lengths about it, that Shakespeare can thrive in a landscape even if the audience is completely nonchalant or even absent in certain cases or hostile in others, sort of.
Okay, two things. First of all, a contradiction. You said that this is something that Shakespeare would never have imagined. I'm not too confident about that. Because you see, if you look at the world of Shakespeare, and if you look at the plays of Shakespeare, you'll find that, these are fictional constructs. And you never know. Obviously, the technology was not there in the 16th and the 17th century. But at the same time, you see the conceptualization and the encouragement to the audience to imagine. Imagination is a very big thing. And what you're really finding and talking about in this situation is just that. It's imagination, isn't it?
Yes, of course. No, so actually you are absolutely correct. When I said that he would have never imagined it, I did not talk about the philosophy of it. I was basically talking about the technology. So nothing remotely technological, apart from the Deus Ex Machina, where, gods and other figures would come down from a lift, or, things would move along.
It doesn't matter. That's just the point. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Exactly. It doesn't matter. But I think he would have been proud. I don't know whether I'm right. But I think Shakespeare wanted to be adapted. If there was a possibility of it remotely being performed in any part of the universe, even digitally, I think he would be on board.
I think he anticipated that.
Yes. I think great authors always do, kind of. I think he anticipated that people from other walks of life or other cultures, or, just like he brought in characters from other cultures all the time as well. So when we are looking at Othello, that's a culture that he hardly understands, and yet he took a more. He has Moroccan characters, he has characters from Italy. We don't know how much experience he had with Rome or Italy, but his characters are Italian. So
you see, the point is there's a difference between realization, logical thought, and genius. Genius is something which is transcendental. And that is what Shakespeare really incorporates and exhibits so powerfully. The other thing that I was thinking about in the context of Desnue, you see, in the COVID period, in Desnue, we were also doing Shakespeare. This was a Shakespeare, maybe not of a skill that this one production that you were talking about, but it was in our own way, we were doing Shakespeare. Because you see, the actors were all alone. No one was obviously getting in touch physically or even spatially with each other. And yet we put on scenes from Shakespeare, and it was a wonderful collage that we had produced. Monique Kinkini here has written a paper on this, and we had Shudesha, who was sort of organizing these things together.
Strangely, I got to know about this just today. And I was like laughing in my head. I'm like, they're going to have such a kick out of this. Because I just, Monique Kinkini mentioned this in her last plenary that, Sudesha was scripting Shakespeare and they were actually, and as you would have it, it was done during COVID time. So I think, you can go into your own heads and hearts to see what attracted you to Shakespeare of all people during that period. And I think the same kind of things may have motivated our, protagonists here. And, this is a brilliant question that I can put to Sudesha and Monique Kinkini that, why would you have gone to Shakespeare of all people? There were postmodern authors, there were modern authors, there were authors who were more existential, the science fiction authors who would have forced on the pandemic situation. Why Shakespeare?
Once again, because it's Shakespeare, just as in this case. Conveners, how much time do we have? Okay, because we've been talking for a long time. The other thing that I frankly didn't like about your presentation, I think that this is a work in progress insofar as you're concerned, because a lot of new theorization that you can use, which I found a little disappointing when I was hearing you. And I don't, generally expect disappointment when I listen to you.
No, I did not have a lot of time to work on it as a plenary because it was in the works as a paper. So I didn't, and...
we'll talk about that maybe off stage.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, audience. Questions, observations, feelings, disagreements, contradictions?
I think all of that will come together when you watch the documentary.
Many of us have not seen the documentary. That is perhaps preventing questions because I think it needs a detailed watch and then we can have
a lot of thought, a lot of
yes. So what we can do is we can share Gargi ma'am's email ID with the participants in the participant group conveners if that is okay with, then we can. Yeah, even that is yeah.
You can just screen. You can just screen the
not
documentary.
Only the students. I mean, I would like to watch this too. So please count me in.
Yeah, lovely. Of course, that would be good. I think once we have all seen the documentary. So.
Actually, I was so unwilling to make this a plenary because I actually originally suggested to Shornendu that they just screen the documentary instead of having me talk about the documentary. I'm like, just screen the film. They will love the film. But as it happens, I had very little time to prepare. But I would urge all of you to actually, have a look at this documentary. It is because Shakespeare is indeed moving in very, very new directions. And, try as we might, we cannot escape the fact that Shakespeare will finally escape the classical stage. He has indeed escaped the classical stage, and very few of us are aware. I think it's the awareness that I most, I most regret. Because by the time these documentaries percolate down to the Indian scenario, it's already 2 years that this documentary has come out. And none of the universities or colleges are showing it yet because they are not aware that it exists. But this is an award-winning documentary. So things are happening around the world and we are falling a little bit behind. So, we are kind of struggling to accept as I think is a problem with basically also, I wouldn't say Indian, but in Bengalis I have found this myself. So the Bengali audience is a very classical audience. They have this love for classical languages, classical texts. I think they struggle a lot when this classicism is under attack or is being appropriated. To a great extent, the language of the documentary will become a problem with the audience because between the Shakespeare you can hear the real life, the real life language emerge and very violently so. So anyway, we come to the end.
I think I'll pause over here. I'll make you pause here. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Just one. No, fantastic. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, sir.
You've stimulated my curiosity, my interest. And once again, this is a paper or a presentation that I'd like to, argue much, much more with you. Because you have some insights, and I think a lot more can be worked into this. Yes. So maybe we can share these opinions and ideas at a later stage. But thank you so much for giving a very stimulating. Please. And thank you for giving us a very stimulating presentation, which we found fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I would now like to invite our Honorable Assistant Dean, Dr. Monikinkini Vasu, to carry on with the valedictory proceedings. Thank you, ma'am.
The biggest challenge is to talk when everybody wants to go home. So the organizers and the conference director has assigned me this task, simply putting me in a spot where I have to make you listen to me. But the good part of listening to me is that I'm going to introduce you to another speaker who has been like a backbone to the concept of SALAAM Shakespeare. So when in April 2022, 22nd April 2022, Shakespeare came to us in the form of SALAAM Shakespeare, first as a cultural program. We had planned back then in the department to celebrate the day where we are going to celebrate the plays of Shakespeare in the form of a performance. From there, today, in 2026, under the leadership of Dr. Priyanka Chakraborty and the conveners Shudesha Das, Shornendu Dam, and Dr. Urchita Banerjee, I think this is for the first time SALAAM Shakespeare has gone international. So big congratulations to the team. And I am extremely proud to announce before you that today we have amidst us, in a very busy schedule, our Pro-Chancellor, Professor Dr. Dhruvajyoti Chattopadhyay, who has been the Vice-Chancellor when we started SALAAM Shakespeare. Every other program that we used to start, we used to go and nag with Sir, this is what we want to start. And very easily he would say, please start. He has never disappointed, never asked us to be disappointed, never thought that we will not succeed. And because of him and Professor Dhar, our dean, I think the department has seen its 5th celebration of Shakespeare, and to what extent we have taken it, that we are now not really looking at Shakespeare's plays, but we are looking at a completely parallel narrative. And with the last plenary, I think, we are so futuristic and we are so positive about the existence, relevance, and the reshuffling of Shakespearean plays, that I'm sure that Professor Chattopadhyay is going to be very, very proud of the department. So over to you for the valedictory address.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Monikinkini, for already giving her few lines that all of you are tired of hearing lectures and you want to go home and definitely you want to have your certificates also. So with that, actually, I think I'm not supposed to say anything to you. But you know that it's English department, it's just new, and it's a SALAAM Shakespeare 5.0. It always created some sort of feelings within myself. And so if I cannot share those things with you, I know you don't want to hear it, but I want to say to you, okay? That's the major problem for me. So when I find out that the title of this year, when we looked at it, it's Global Culture and Shakespeare, and the politics of reading, adapting, and teaching. All these three are actually so much very close to anyone who is working with Shakespeare. Because as a teacher, as a researcher, you can actually think that these are the things which always come to our mind. You read Shakespeare, and I don't know, when I read it at class 7, 8, when I read it during my college life, when I read it during my post-graduation, the same text actually, I felt it different. Always it actually, I got to know something which is different from the previous one. And if I thought about his plays and poems, which is written late 16th or early 17th century, in the last conversation, it's very nicely mentioned actually, the traveling of these particular things from local to global, and in such a way so that Shakespeare himself actually, very nicely Gargi mentioned about it, that from Italy, from the places where he actually, Morocco, these are some things which are coming to him, and he actually expressed it so nicely. So beyond the nation state, recognizing the intercultural exchanges and shifting the cultural identities. The other thing which is coming into the mind, the politics of reading Shakespeare. It begins with the question, who has the right to interpret him? Who has got the right to interpret him? For centuries, Shakespeare was treated as a universal genius. Professor Dhar mentioned the term, genius. The universal genius of European civilization. If you look at the colonial education, that often used Shakespeare as a tool of cultural prestige, presenting English literature as superior to indigenous traditions. In British India, the students were taught Hamlet, Macbeth, Julius Caesar as symbols of refinement and moral instruction. However, the readers across the colonized world did not passively accept this moral. I think, as Gargi actually did, they always appropriated Shakespeare creatively, to look at it from a completely different point. Look at having a specific type of methodology to express, to understand this particular Shakespeare. So adaptation is perhaps the clearest sign of Shakespeare's global vitality. His works have inspired countless reinventions in theatre, cinema, literature, and digital media now. So adaptation refuses the notion of a fixed original text. Instead, it treats Shakespeare as material to be revised according to contemporary needs. Akira Kurosawa's Throne of Blood reimagines Macbeth in feudal Japan. Vishal Bharadwaj's Maqbool relocates the same strategy to the Mumbai underworld. Haider transforms Hamlet into a meditation on Kashmir, militarization, and disappearance. These adaptations do not merely retell Shakespeare, they use him to think through urgent local politics. So that's why Salaam to Shakespeare. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Sir, and now we move to the final section where we are going to invite two of the three conveners of the conference because due to some family exigency, our third convener is not in the town right now. So we will invite Shudesha Das and Swarnendu Dam to deliver the official vote of thanks.
And so, from hour to hour, we ripe and ripe. And then, from hour to hour, we rot and rot. And thereby hangs a tale. So that is the tale of Salaam Shakespeare told by Desanu every year. This year, the two-day international conference has not only deepened our scholarly engagement, but also reaffirmed the enduring vitality of the bird in a rapidly changing world. Hence, let us carry forward the insights, questions, and collaborations sparked during these days, allowing them to inspire future research, teaching, and academic inquiry. As we come to the closure of SALAAM SHAKESPEARE 5.0, it's time to deliver the formal vote of thanks. And before I begin, I would like Professor Swarnendu Dam to... Okay, no. Okay. Okay. So let us have the privilege to thank the Honorable Chancellor Shri Shotam Roy Chaudhary, Honorable Pro-Chancellor Professor Dr. Dhrubajyoti Chattopadhyay, who is already here, Honorable Vice-Chancellor Professor Dr. Anupam Basu, Pro-VC Academics Professor Dr. Madhumita Mojumdar and Pro-VC Administration Mr. Shuprotim Sen, respected Registrar Mr. Shumanto Basu and CFO Mr. Shubir Rokhit of Sister Nivedita University for always encouraging us to conduct such academic and scholarly events at SNU.
We would also like to extend our thanks to Director Academics, Professor Dr. Pradip Dattagupta, for his always youthful enthusiasm regarding conduction of conferences and similar academic events. We would like to thank the Controller of Examinations, Mr. Pinak Shaha, for his support in spite of a busy pre-examination schedule. We are indebted to the Administrative Officer, Mr. Alok Bhattacharya, for helping us with the logistics in every possible way. We are grateful to the Dean, School of Arts, Media and Science, Professor Minal Parikh, for providing us a super active team of photographers and all kind of technical support. The photographers are here for yesterday, all the students, they are here today. So thanks to you. It's a very thankless job, we all know, but hats off to your dedication. And I would like to have a special mention. Naranda is here with us. As I always say that it is not possible to conduct conferences in the 3 different floors, the sound system, everything. Naranda is there, so that is why it is possible. So it's not possible without him. A huge round of applause for him. Now coming to my team, Desnu. Let us express our heartfelt gratitude to the Dean of the School of Humanities, Language and Social Sciences, Professor Dr. Shubir Dhar, whose brainchild is Salaam Shakespeare. So what we all are experiencing now is because of him. And I would like to thank him, especially because he agreed to chair 4 panel discussions. It's not a matter of joke. Like I said, sir, you have to do it because you are the senior-most person, or you are the best person to chair all these sessions. So from 9:30 to 10, and now it's almost 4:30. It's 7-8 hours. So thank you very much, sir, for chairing all the sessions and for being here with us. Our heartful gratitude to the Assistant Dean of School of Humanities, Language and Social Sciences, Dr. Monikinki Basu, for our guidance at every step. Whenever there is an issue, something is not going right, so we know we can approach her.
Just like what we experienced today morning.
Yeah, exactly this morning. So we know that she is there, so things will be sorted.
And
so
also under whose headship we actually started SALAAM Shakespeare.
Absolutely.
That's why.
We are grateful to the head of the Department of English and the conference director of SALAAM Shakespeare 5.0, Dr. Priyanka Chakraborty. She put extreme effort to make this conference international, because it's not an easy matter to get hold of professors like Ruth Vanita or Shilatika Veena. So we talked to her. Dean sir is there, so it is because of her and Dean sir we could move this conference to an international level this year. Thanks to you, ma'am. And apart from that, all the faculty members of the department, the research scholars of DESNU, for their relentless support and active presence on both days. I would like to specially thank Ms. Trisha Dash, senior research scholar of our department. Trisha, I would like to have you here, please. No, please. You have to be here because I think you all know what kind of effort she puts in all our conferences. The take to managing all the 3 venues, the volunteers. Okay, so it's not possible to do anything, any sort of conference in such a smooth way without her effort. And we know how difficult to control all this take and all these things are. We just completely depend on her. So thank you again, Fisher. A huge thanks to all the housekeeping staff who have been here since morning and will be here after we leave. They deserve a huge cheer from all of us.
And at last but not the least, many congratulations and great thanks to the souls of DESNU, our dear, dear students. Yes, keep cheering for yourself, please. We are really very grateful because you put so much effort in, be it a small, be it a big, whatever event that is, you always put too much effort. And we are really proud of your never-dying enthusiasm. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, all our eminent personalities, dignitaries, the keynote speaker, the plenary speakers, and the speakers in the panel discussion, the chairs, and all the paper presenters for joining and enriching us on these 2 days. And we look forward to such grand conferences and fruitful scholarly engagements in the days to come. We began with Shakespeare, so let us end with his words again. That still echoes and relevant for what DESNU has to respond to your participation. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. Else DESNU a liar call. So, good night unto you all. Thank you.
So, thank you. So, all the participants, those who are here, the volunteers, students, and everyone, tea has been served, as I always say.
Before that, I think I would like to welcome you all to stage for our group photo.
Yes. We will click a photo and
audience,
then.
Please.
Yes.